Well, we seem to be live in preparation for the quiz night. I'll be busily for a little while looking at the link and making sure that people can actually get hold of it. In the meantime, please get yourself settled down with a drink or whatever it is that you want, and I'm sure that you will thoroughly enjoy the quiz night if you've enjoyed the last few. I have tried to make it a little easier this time, but I thought last week's was a bit easier and it doesn't seem to have been. So we'll just have to wait and see, won't we? Anyway, we will carry on preparing, and I will make sure that there is a link to the quiz night that goes up on the various social media. If you'll bear with me, I will arrange for that to happen. Starting to get there. Excellent. A horrible picture of me with a shiny face. I have to try and remember to smile while I'm doing this, rather than concentrate and grimace, because I think you can probably see me while I'm at it. That's now being shared on Facebook. And we'll move on to Twitter. And just to check that the links work, which they do. And then we'll come back to see whether anybody is logging in. Oh, we have Colin and Suzanne, we have Adam and Daniel. Oh, we're getting there. We have Adam the Soundy, hello. Well, good to hear from you, Adam. We have apparently 8 people online, and we have another 5 minutes to go before we start. And we've got a confused dog again. He'll settle down. Will you settle down, Louis? Will you just settle down? Lie down. Lie down. Trying to work out who I'm talking to. He's like this when I'm on the phone. We've got 12 online now. Can I remind you that if you have a YouTube or Google account, and if you have followed this or subscribed to this channel, then you can make comments in the live chat. If you haven't, or even if you have, if you prefer to do it by email, you can email contact@crookedspire.org, and I have all the emails there on the other screen. Fiona and Roger have just checked in, so we've got 12 online now, and I think we're beginning to get there. A little while to go before we start. I thought you might not get a shiny face from me this evening because there's been no sun, but the sun has come out. So the sun is shining off my shiny face. If anybody wants to send me some Amateur Dramatics face powder, then perhaps next time I won't have such a shiny face. Mary Kellery says, good evening. Good evening, Mary. We now have 14 online. 15. We're starting to get there. I think we'll have a decent collection of people. Lie down. Go and lie down. Not you, the dog. Lie down, Louis. Go and lie down. Go and lie down. Lie down. Good boy. And he's lying down there for 2 minutes. We have, hello, Rebecca Landers, we've got you here. I'll repeat what I said earlier about the quiz. I thought last week's quiz was going to be easier than the first week's, and people seem to have found it harder. I hope you'll find this evening still challenging, but I have tried to include some easier questions in there. Maybe my perception of what's easier isn't yours, who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. There are 10 rounds as usual tonight, 10 rounds of 10 questions each. There'll be a break after the first 5 rounds. Somebody says their dogs don't listen to them either. Well, he is lying down now. And then after all the questions have been asked, there'll be another break before the answers. So you'll have plenty of time to either to make yourselves comfortable or to get yourselves a drink. We're heading closer to the time. We've got 2 minutes to go. We now have 15 viewers online. We're still getting there. I did advertise the categories for these both last week and during the week. I haven't, if we have a quiz next week, I haven't even decided what the categories are going to be. So maybe if you want a quiz next week, you can make some suggestions. Ball family is ready. So we now have 14 online, and the one clock says 7:30, but the other clock has still got a minute to go. And Louis is going to go and hide behind the chair. He does like it behind the chair. He goes there when he wants to be quiet. Louis is very, very sensitive to sound, so he likes quiet. He doesn't always behave in a quiet way, but he likes quiet. And one of the reasons he was returned to the rescue centre where I got him from is because the person who was looking after him for a couple of years used to raise her voice rather too much, and that he was unhappy, and eventually she was unwell and couldn't keep on with him. So it's much better that Louis is here. and he has been a great companion now for nearly 4 years. 4 years of Louis. Hello, we have Kathy Walton. Hello, Kathy. We're on 17 now, and in a moment we're going to start. We've just gone over the 7:30. We'll give people a little while longer to tune in before we actually start. I hate starting late, but starting late with a quiz is a problem for people because, of course, they need to hear the questions. So we've just gone past 19:30 and a half, and we'll wait till 19:31 and then we'll get going. We now have 19 online, so we have a good audience, and I hope a good participation. We've got the Halloms who are joining in, and we are now gone 19:31, gone 7:31, so we will make a start. So I said before, welcome to this evening's quiz. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy the questions and trying to find the answers. And I hope that in the midst of all the other uncertain things that are going on, this can be something pleasurable which we can share. Round one is TV drama. TV drama. And the first question: when was the final episode of Downton Abbey broadcast? When was the final episode of Downton Abbey broadcast? Not that very long ago. I could never see what people found attractive about Downton Abbey, but lots of people really got into Downton Abbey. There has, of course, been a film as well, but on the television, this is TV drama. Question one is, when was the final episode of Downton Abbey broadcast? Question two, how many TV adaptations of the Forsyte Saga have there been? How many TV adaptations of the Forsyte Saga have there been? I'm asked about question one, whether I want the full date or just the year. Well, given the scores that people have had, perhaps we can be generous with the scoring and give one for the year and two for the correct full date. How about that? But question two is, how many TV adaptations of the Forsyte Saga have there been? I'll give you a clue for that. The first adaptation was something which my parents were very surprised I really got into. I was quite intrigued by the Forsyte Saga at a very tender age. Question three then. What part does Benjamin Zephaniah play in Peaky Blinders? What part does Benjamin Zephaniah play in Peaky Blinders? Lie down. Lie down. No, that's not the answer. Lie down. What part does Benjamin Zephaniah play in Peaky Blinders? Question four, not quite so recent. Who played Chief Superintendent Strange in Inspector Morse? Who played Chief Superintendent Strange in Inspector Morse? Inspector Morse was the vast success. It's difficult to realise how long ago it was, really. And I'm asking, who played Chief Superintendent Strange in Inspector Morse? He also played, if you would like a clue, he played the Chief Whip in Yes, Prime Minister. And he also played the headmaster in the radio show King Street Junior. So I wanted to know, who played Chief Superintendent Strange in Inspector Morse? Question five, this takes you right back. Who was the Duchess of Duke Street? And I want the character name here, please, not the actor. Who was the Duchess of Duke Street? Takes people right back into their memories. Who was the Duchess of Duke Street? The character, not the actor. Question 6. Who played Miss Marple in the eponymous BBC series? There have been quite a number of Miss Marple series. I want to know who played Miss Marple in the BBC series that was called Miss Marple. Probably, in recent years, the most famous Miss Marple. Who played Miss Marple in the eponymous BBC series? Question 7. Who wrote Rumpole of the Bailey? Who wrote Rumpole of the Bailey? It's one of my favourites, something which I watch when I'm in need of comfort. Although I've not been tempted to drink vast quantities of claret and smoke large or even small evil-smelling cigars. Who wrote Rumpole of the Bailey? Question 8. In which county is the fictional town of Ashfordley? In which county is the fictional town of Ashfordley? And yes, it is about TV drama. I think that's probably one which you'll either know or you won't know. But it's actually from a very popular TV drama. In which county is the fictional town of Ashfordley? Question 9, coming up to very recently. Which quiz show is the setting for Quiz? Which quiz show is the setting for Quiz? And I'll keep quiet about that because I think if I say anything, I'll give you a clue. So I'll just repeat the question one last time. Which quiz show is the setting for Quiz? And the last question of this round is, who played Livia in I, Claudius? Who played Livia in I, Claudius? I, Claudius, get another drama from my youth, which my parents were surprised that I really enjoyed. Who played Livia in I, Claudius? Perhaps I enjoyed in the Forsyte Saga and I, Claudius, all the evil plotting and backstabbing. I don't know. Who played Livia in I, Claudius? So I'll go back over those 10 questions in case you need a reminder. When was the first episode of Downton Abbey broadcast? How many TV adaptations of the Forsyte Saga have there been? What part does Benjamin Zephaniah play in Peaky Blinders? Who played Chief Superintendent Strange in Inspector Morse? Who was the Duchess of Duke Street? The name of the character, not the actor. Who played Miss Marple in the eponymous BBC series? Who wrote Rumpole of the Bailey? In which county is the fictional town of Ashfordley? Which quiz show is the setting for Quiz? And who played Livia in I, Claudius? So that's round 1. Round 2 is information technology. And question 1, in what year was the first commercial Macintosh put on the market? In what year was the first commercial Macintosh with the name of Macintosh put on the market? I have a date here as well, so if you know the date as well as the year, you can have an extra point. So that was, in what year was the first commercial Macintosh put on the market? Question 2. Who is considered to be the father of the modern computer? Who is considered to be the father of the modern computer? It's a good question. Some people may be able to answer this from their film knowledge. Who knows? Who is considered to be the father of the modern computer? Question 3. How many bytes are there in a binary measured kilobyte? Be careful with this one. How many bytes are there in a binary measured kilobyte? I can remember at the age of 10 failing a maths exam because the general exam was half ordinary maths and half binary maths, and I'd never studied binary maths, and they told us if we hadn't done it, ignore it. But I was fascinated, so I spent most of the exam trying to work out what the binary maths meant, and therefore I failed because I didn't try the rest of it. How many bytes are there in a binary measured kilobyte? Question 4. Which company produced the all-in-one personal computer and word processor from 1985 to 1998? I had one of these, and for the time, they were really good. The company had worked out that most people who had desktop computers only used them for word processing, so they produced an all-in-one with a keyboard and an integrated screen and computer with a disk drive, and then a printer which was dedicated to it as well. A dot matrix printer, who remember those? Which company produced the all-in-one personal computer and word processor from 1985 to 1998? Question 5. When was Google founded? The year will be sufficient. If you have the month, then I'll give you an extra point. When was Google founded? When was Google founded? Question 6. On which operating system was Microsoft Windows originally built? On which operating system was Microsoft Windows originally built? Microsoft Windows began as a user interface, which meant you could have easy access to how the computer worked by clicking on icons and pictures and things like that. And it had a basic operating system underneath, which you didn't have to worry about, so you didn't have to put lots of formulas in to make it work. On which operating system was Microsoft Windows originally built? Question 7. What was the standard size of a floppy disk immediately prior to its replacement by the CD-ROM? What was the standard size of a floppy disk immediately prior to its replacement by the CD-ROM? I actually had computers which ran 2 other sizes of floppy disk, but by the time CD-ROMs took over, the standard size was this one, and that's what I want. What was the standard size of a floppy disk immediately prior to its replacement by the CD-ROM? Question 8. In what country is Samsung based? In what country is Samsung based? Surprising what Samsung make. Apart from washing machines and other things, they make quite a lot of IT. Samsung memory is well thought of, apparently. In what country is Samsung based? Question 9. What type of document does Microsoft Excel work with? What type of document does Microsoft Excel work with? For those of us who've worked with Microsoft Office from its very inception, it's quite interesting to recall how basic it once was, and yet how, with all the abilities which it has, most of those basic functionalities which it had at the start are the ones which are still mainly used today. What type of document does Microsoft Excel work with? And question 10, what was the first commercially marketed home video games console? What was the first commercially marketed home video games console? Those of you who don't know the answer to this, please do guess, but I think you'll be quite surprised by, I've got the date of it here, you'll be quite surprised by how far back it goes. What was the first commercially marketed home video games console? So, the 10 questions were, in what year was the first commercial Macintosh put on the market? Who is considered to be the father of the modern computer? How many bytes are there in a binary measured kilobyte? Which company produced the all-in-one personal computer and word processor from 1985 to 1998? When was Google founded? On which operating system was Microsoft Windows originally built? What was the standard size of a floppy disk immediately prior to its replacement by the CD-ROM? In what country is Samsung based? What type of document does Microsoft Excel work with? And what was the first commercially marketed home video games console? So if you squirmed with information technology, perhaps you will have a more down-to-earth approach to life and have a good score with agriculture. Question 1. What are Holstein Friesian cattle bred for? What are Holstein Friesian cattle bred for? I used to live in a rectory with a hedge between the rectory garden and one of the fields where a good number of Holstein Friesians and also a good number of Herefords were kept. Wonderful animals, and the farmer, who was a very small farmer, loved every single one of them. You could see him bringing the cattle in and with his arm around some of them. Old-fashioned farming. What are Holstein Friesian cattle bred for? Question 2. What sort of animal is a Tamworth? What sort of animal is a Tamworth? I can't travel on the train from Chesterfield to Birmingham, which of course goes across Tamworth, goes over the top of Tamworth, without thinking of these. Tamworth, a strange place, because there's a station on the one line and a station on the other line, just like a lot of valley stations used to have high level and low level. What sort of animal is a Tamworth? Question 3. Please don't sneeze. What is rapeseed commonly used for? What is rapeseed commonly used for? Strangely enough, though, I get terrible hay fever very early in the season. Rapeseed doesn't bother me at all. So yellow fields are not a problem. What is rapeseed commonly used for? Question 4. Very seasonal. In which 2 English counties is most of the commercial asparagus crop grown? In which 2 English counties is most of the commercial asparagus crop grown? I have some in the fridge. If you've answered the question already, you may suggest some recipes I can use. I tend to put asparagus in risottos or just eat it with cheese melted over it. Has to be fairly mild cheese to complement with a little sharpness, a little acidity to go with the asparagus, and a lot of pepper. In which 2 English counties is most of the commercial asparagus crop grown? Question 5. When is winter wheat sown? When is winter wheat sown? Or drilled if you prefer. When is winter wheat sown? Question 6. Which family do cabbages, cauliflowers and broccoli belong to? Which family do cabbages, cauliflowers, and broccoli belong to? In Italy, in ornamental winter gardens, ornamental versions of this family, varieties of this family, are very often part of the displays. And you think, well, we eat these things, but there are quite a lot of varieties of these in Mediterranean countries, many of which have a much better flavour than cauliflowers, cabbages, and broccoli, which we have. Which family do cabbages, cauliflowers, and broccoli belong to? Question 7. What is the most common breed of sheep in the British Isles? What is the most common breed of sheep in the British Isles? Now, I thought I knew this, and I've double-checked every single answer on this, and I had it wrong. What is the most common breed of sheep in the British Isles? Question 8. Shame on you if you don't know the answer to this one. Which county was known as the Orchard of England? Which county was known as the Orchard of England? In the days when you got lots of English cherries, and those days are returning. In the days when many hops were grown in England, and again those days seem to be returning, this county was where most of them came from. Which county was known as the Orchard of England? And not to mention apples and pears and other things which properly belong in an orchard. Question 9. What is the most commonly planted potato in the UK? By a very, very long way. What is the most commonly planted potato in the UK? I'll allow this clue. One of the reasons it's the most commonly planted potato in the UK is because it's the one that chip shops prefer. What is the most commonly planted potato in the UK? And question 10. When was battery production of eggs prohibited in the UK? When was battery production of eggs prohibited in the UK? I have a full date here. I'll give a point for the year and again an extra point for the full date. When was battery production of eggs prohibited in the UK? So we'll go back over those questions. What are Holstein Friesian cattle bred for? What sort of animal is a Tamworth? What is rapeseed commonly used for? In which 2 English counties is most of the commercial asparagus crop grown? When is winter wheat sown? Which family do cabbages, cauliflowers, and broccoli belong to? What is the most common breed of sheep in the British Isles? Which county was known as the Orchard of England? What is the most commonly planted potato in the UK? And when was battery production of eggs prohibited in the UK? We'll move on to round 4, which is engineering. And this gave quite a wide palette to paint questions on. Question 1. In an Otto cycle internal combustion engine, and I've been very specific there, but just to let you know, if you don't know what that is, an Otto cycle internal combustion engine is most of the petrol engines in cars today are Otto cycle. In an Otto cycle internal combustion engine, which of these can be replaced by electronic actuators? The camshaft or the drive shaft? In an Otto cycle internal combustion engine, which of these can be replaced by electronic actuators, the camshaft or the drive shaft? There are 4 main different cycles which internal combustion engines have. The most common is the Otto cycle, followed very closely by the diesel cycle. And there is also, and I don't know exactly what the difference is, the Atkinson cycle, which is used in some Toyota hybrid cars. And there is also the the rotary engine, the German name of which is not often mentioned in this country, the Wankel engine, which is the smoothest engine of all because the whole thing moves rather than having to translate the linear movement into circular movement. And of course, it's a very difficult engine to maintain and to keep reliable. So it hasn't been used in many cars. The latest was the Mazda MX-8. Anyway, in the Otto cycle internal combustion engine, which of these can be replaced by electronic actuators, the camshaft or the drive shaft? Question 2. Which was the tallest railway viaduct in the UK from its opening in 1857 until its dismantling in 1967? Some believe it was the tallest in the world. But the Guinness Book of Records, which used to say it was the tallest in the world, changed to it was the tallest in the UK, but it was the tallest all the way through from its opening until its dismantling. Which was the tallest railway viaduct in the UK from its opening in 1857 until its dismantling in 1967? Question 3. What were Roman aqueducts built for? What were Roman aqueducts built for? I should think that's probably easy enough for you. You see the Roman aqueducts, not only, of course, in Italy, but also elsewhere. And my question is, what were Roman aqueducts built for? Question 4. Which Florentine engineer outlined the principles of flight? Which Florentine engineer outlined the principles of flight? Give you a clue here, you need to go right back. Which Florentine engineer outlined the principles of flight? Question 5. Which engineer built the Great Western Railway? Which engineer built the Great Western Railway? It would be my favourite engineer, wouldn't it? But nevertheless, the question is, which engineer built the Great Western Railway? Question 6. What is the term for the pivot point of a lever? What is the term for the pivot point of a lever? Think back to all those physics questions, physics lessons. What is the term for the pivot point of a lever? Question 7. What was the fastest passenger airliner ever to operate across the Atlantic? What was the fastest passenger airliner ever to operate across the Atlantic? Some of us strongly regret that it doesn't still operate, although I don't suppose I would ever have been able to afford to go on it, but it just is a very wonderful piece of engineering. What was the fastest passenger airliner ever to operate across the Atlantic? Question 8. How long is the Humber Bridge? The answer is not very long. How long is the Humber Bridge? I've driven under it a number of times, never over it. How long is the Humber Bridge? Question 9. Medieval structures were often built using a cruck or crook frame. Medieval structures were often built using a cruck or crook frame. Today, a similar structure is still used. What is it called? Medieval structures were often built using a cruck or crook frame. Today, a similar structure is still used. What is it called? I'll give you a clue for this as well. This is an easier answer than you might think. You will kick yourself. Medieval structures were often built using a crack or crook frame. Today, a similar structure is still used. What is it called? And question 10, who developed the first successful hovercraft? Who developed the first successful hovercraft? Just like the answer to question 7, the fact that hovercraft no longer operate across the channel, I find a matter for great regret. I used to like going on the hovercraft. It was always no nonsense, quick. Not too many people on, so you weren't waiting ages to get on and off. And by the time you started suffering from the motion, you were there. Who developed the first successful hovercraft? So back over the engineering questions. In an Otto cycle internal combustion engine, which of these can be replaced by electronic actuators? Is it the camshaft or the drive shaft? Question 2, which was the tallest railway viaduct in the UK from its opening in 1857 until its dismantling in 1967? Question 3, what were Roman aqueducts built for? Question 4, which Florentine engineer outlined the principles of flight? Question 5, which engineer built the Great Western Railway? Question 6, what is the term for the pivot point of a lever? Question 7, what was the fastest passenger airliner ever to operate across the Atlantic? Question 8, how long is the Humber Bridge? Question 9, medieval structures were often built using a crack or crook frame. Today, a similar structure is still used. What is it called? And question 10, who developed the first successful hovercraft? So, how did you get on in that round? We'll move on to round 5 before the break. And round 5 is cars. So, steel yourself to have a good round. Question 1. What was the last model to be produced under the brand name of Humber? What was the last model to be produced under the brand name of Humber? When I was in secondary school, the headmaster's preference was for Humbers. He had a couple of Super Snipes. They were lovely cars. They always looked bigger than the other cars in the car park. What was the last model to be produced under the brand name of Humber? Question 2. What configuration of engine, derived from Alfa Romeo technology, powers most Subarus? Be careful with the question. I'm asking what configuration of engine, derived from Alfa Romeo technology, powers most Subarus? Alfa Romeo used this technology in the Alfa Sud and the Alfa 33 because it allowed the engines, it allowed the vehicles to have a very low center of gravity at the front. They weren't the first to use it. It was used in Volkswagen Beetles and Type 2s, and it still powers most Subarus. What configuration of engine derived from Alfa Romeo technology powers most Subarus? I've given you plenty of clues there. Question 3. How many iterations, how many marks, as in Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, etc., did the European Ford Escort have? How many iterations or marks did the European Ford Escort have? I'm taking great care to specify the European Ford Escort because there was an American model as well. How many iterations or marks did the European Ford Escort have? Question 4. How many doors does a coupe usually have? How many doors does a coupe usually have? I've never been tempted by coupes. Some people say how elegant they are, and I've never been able to see that. How many doors does a coupe usually have? Question 5. What plastic car with a 2-stroke engine was common in East Germany and is now a collector's piece? What plastic car with a 2-stroke engine was common in East Germany? The economy was such, and of course these cars were produced by a state-owned company, that you had to join a waiting list for allocation of these cars, and you might have to wait 18 months or 2 years depending on whether the government thought you needed one or not. Having said that, they were very slow, very basic, and virtually indestructible. What plastic car with a 2-stroke engine was common in East Germany? When I say indestructible, if you had an accident in one, you were done for if it was at speed, but they didn't fall apart. Question 6. Which recently deceased driver was described as the greatest driver never to have won the World Championship? Which recently deceased driver was described as the greatest driver never to have won the World Championship? Somebody whose name has been synonymous with motor racing for most of my lifetime. Which recently deceased driver was described as the greatest driver never to have won the World Championship? Question 7. Why were Saab cars known for their aerodynamics and ergonomics? Aerodynamics is how slippery the car is as it goes into the wind, into the air, and ergonomics is how convenient everything is as you use the instruments in the car, and of course everything comes to sight. Why were Saab cars known for their aerodynamics and ergonomics? Question 8. Which British make of cars starred in the Italian Job? Which British make of cars starred in the Italian Job? When I recently watched the Italian Job on Blu-ray, beautiful rendering of it on Blu-ray for its, I think, 40th anniversary. I was struck by how beautiful the Italian cars were and how much things must have been fixed that the Italian cars didn't catch the British cars. Of course, the Italian cars being in their own city, but it was a lot of fun, and a very famous British make of cars was part of took part of the starring role in that. Question 9. Which car came in any colour as long as it was black? Which car came in any colour as long as it was black? Taking some people back into the depths of memory there. Which car came in any colour as long as it was black? And question 10. Which is this year's What Car Best Performance Car for the 3rd year running? Which is this year's What Car Best Performance Car for the 3rd year running? And which, if I win tonight's lottery, will be my next car? Which is this year's What Car Best Performance Car for the 3rd year running? So before the break, I'll go back over round 5. What was the last model to be produced under the brand name of Humber? What configuration of engine derived from Alfa Romeo technology powers most Subarus? How many iterations or marques did the European Ford Escort have? How many doors does a coupe usually have? What plastic car with a 2-stroke engine was common in East Germany? Which recently deceased driver was described as the greatest driver never to have won the World Championship? Why were Saab cars known for their aerodynamics and ergonomics? Which British make of cars starred in the Italian Job? Which car came in any colour as long as it was black? And which is this year's What Car Best Performance Car for the 3rd year running? And I'll leave you with those questions to mull over. If you need to go and make yourself comfortable, now is your opportunity. If you need to go and get yourself a drink or a cup of tea, now is your opportunity. I'm going to go and get myself a drink, and I will leave you to guess what my drink will be, because I don't know yet. I'm ringing the changes with the drink. Since the last round was to do with cars, this is a whiskey which has a petrol nose to it, and it's also one which I don't like so much, but I can still enjoy, which means I won't drink very much of it. Just a little to clear the throat while I'm still talking. Oh, we've got Audrey has joined us. That's great. If anybody would like to let us know how they're doing, then I'm sure that would be welcome. We are now at 1:15, and I think we will make a start again once I have wet my whistle. It's got to be about 3-4 years since I last had anything out of that bottle, and I think it's mellowed in that time. Not unpleasant. Okay, we'll make a start. Round 6 is iconic structures. Iconic structures. I looked at the questions which I put together, and I'd originally said iconic buildings, and I realized one of them wasn't a building, well, properly a building, so I changed it to iconic structures. Question 1. What was the original purpose of the Taj Mahal? What was the original purpose of the Taj Mahal? Quite a lot of people say they'd like to see the Taj Mahal. They put it on their bucket list. I think India is on my bucket list, but I'm not one for grandiose buildings. I prefer to... Oh, thank you, Fiona. Somebody said cheers. I prefer to look at the everyday life of places I go to, really, and I think India must be fascinating from that point of view. But the question is, what was the original purpose of the Taj Mahal? Question 2. Which is considered the greatest Gothic building south of the Alps? Which is considered the greatest Gothic building south of the Alps? And I won't give you any clues at all about that one. Which is considered the greatest Gothic building south of the Alps? Question 3. In which year was the Empire State Building opened? In which year was the Empire State Building opened? I'll give you a clue for that. Herbert Hoover was still president. In which year was the Empire State Building opened? Question 4, and forgive me if I pronounce this incorrectly. Which civilization built Machu Picchu? I'll spell it for you in case my pronunciation is completely up the creek. M-A-C-H-U-P-I-C-C-H-U. Which civilization built Machu Picchu? Question 5. Which South American city is dominated by a statue of Christ the Redeemer? Which South American city is dominated by a statue of Christ the Redeemer? Question 6. What architectural style is the Sydney Opera House? And don't say awful or wonderful, depending on whether you like it or not. It's in a specific style. What architectural style is the Sydney Opera House? Question 7. What method is used to fix Chesterfield's crooked spire to its tower? What method is used to fix Chesterfield's crooked spire to its tower? Question we're often asked, and some of you certainly do know the answer. What method is used to fix Chesterfield's crooked spire to its tower? Question 8. Which is higher, the Eiffel Tower or the Blackpool Tower? Which is higher, the Eiffel Tower or the Blackpool Tower? Strangely enough, I've seen the Eiffel Tower, but never the Blackpool Tower. Which is higher, the Eiffel Tower or the Blackpool Tower? Question 9. Where can you find the famous Raffles Hotel? Where can you find the famous Raffles Hotel? Number of films set there. And if you go and stay there these days, it's very, very expensive. Where can you find the famous Raffles Hotel? Question 10. Who is the Hallgrímskirkja in Reykjavik dedicated to? Who is the Hallgrímskirkja in Reykjavik dedicated to? I read a fascinating thing about this church, which is the Lutheran Cathedral, and is quite a mixture of styles, but very spectacular. And apparently the Lutherans, whose cathedral it is, decided that it was not quite high enough, and they wanted to make sure that it was much higher than the Catholic cathedral, so that's why it is quite so high. Who is the Hallgrímskirkja in Reykjavik dedicated to? So, to recap round 6, what was the original purpose of the Taj Mahal? Which is considered to be the greatest Gothic building south of the Alps? In which year was the Empire State Building opened? Which civilization built Machu Picchu? Which South American city is dominated by a statue of Christ the Redeemer? What architectural style is the Sydney Opera House? What method is used to fix Chesterfield's crooked spire to its tower? Which is higher, the Eiffel Tower or the Blackpool Tower? Where can you find the famous Raffles Hotel? And who is the Hallgrímskirkja in Reykjavik dedicated to? So, if you found that a sticky round, perhaps tea and coffee will be something that you can enjoy instead. Question 1. Which country is the largest world producer of coffee? Which country is the largest world producer of coffee? There's actually a song about it. Which country is the largest world producer of coffee? Question 2. In which continent did coffee originate? In which continent did coffee originate? See how you get on with that. Question 3. In which continent did tea originate? In which continent did tea originate? I've often wanted to grow tea. Not sure whether Chesterfield's climate would work for that. In which continent did tea originate? Question 4. In the light of the answer to this one, maybe Chesterfield's climate would be suitable. How many Scottish grown teas can you buy? How many Scottish grown teas can you buy? And this is not a trick question. How many Scottish grown teas can you buy? Question 5. In which city in Italy was the espresso machine invented? In which city in Italy was the espresso machine invented? Probably the lifesaver of Italian life, the Italian way of life. In which city in Italy was the espresso machine invented? Question 6. What is a samovar? What is a samovar? What is a samovar? Question 7. What spice is commonly added to coffee in the Middle East? What spice is commonly added to coffee in the Middle East? And strangely pleasant it is, especially if it's brewed like Turkish coffee and very thick. What spice is commonly added to coffee in the Middle East? Question 8. Which company produces PG Tips? Which company produces PG Tips? I want the brand name. I expect it belongs to some greater company these days, but I want the brand name of the company that produces PG Tips. Question 9. What is added to camp coffee? What is added to camp coffee? Which is still sold today and still as vile as it ever was. What is added to camp coffee? And question 10. In the coffee houses of which city was the Russian Revolution planned? In the coffee houses of which city was the Russian Revolution planned? Bear in mind that coffee houses in many places were places where politics and subversion took place. During the Commonwealth, Cromwell toyed with the idea of banning coffee houses for that reason. In the coffee houses of which city was the Russian Revolution planned? So to recap, which country is the largest world producer of coffee? In which continent did coffee originate? In which continent did tea originate? How many Scottish-grown teas can you buy? Where in Italy was the espresso machine invented? What is a samovar? What spice is commonly added to coffee in the Middle East? Which company produces PG Tips? What is added to camp coffee? And in the coffee houses of which city was the Russian Revolution planned? Okay, we move on to round 8. Rigging the changes, we move on to science fiction. And question 1, how many Star Wars films have there been? How many Star Wars films have there been? And I don't want spin-off or knock-off films. The main canon of Star Wars films, how many have there been? Question 2, who wrote Day of the Triffids? Who wrote Day of the Triffids? One of the many science fiction novels which had a television spin-off which had me hiding behind the sofa in younger days. Who wrote Day of the Triffids? Question 3. Which science fiction radio novel adaptation caused a panic in 1930s America? Which science fiction radio series adaptation of a novel caused a panic in 1930s America? And it did cause a panic, although some people have tried to rewrite the history on that. Which science fiction radio series an adaptation of a novel, caused a panic in 1930s America? Question 4. What was the family's name in Lost in Space? What was the family's name in Lost in Space? Takes you right back to, what was the family's name in Lost in Space? Question 5, one of the science fiction greats. Who was the mastermind behind the world of Star Trek? Who was the mastermind behind the world of Star Trek? I could fill several quizzes with questions about different iterations of Star Trek, and I won't do that because I think you'd probably all get bored. Who was the mastermind behind the world of Star Trek? Question 6. Which planet does Doctor Who come from? Which planet does Doctor Who come from? Which planet does Doctor Who come from? Question 7. Who wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Who wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Just in case you're completely confused, it is a novel. Who wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? If you don't know that one, you should know the next one. Question 8. Who is the dictator figure in 1984? Who is the dictator figure in 1984? That, I think, qualifies as a general knowledge question. But who is the dictator figure in 1984? Question 9. Who is the central protagonist, the main character, of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Who is the central protagonist of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? Some of which has been repeated recently. Who is the central protagonist of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? And question 10. Which novel published by Mary Shelley in 1818 is often considered the first work of modern science fiction? Which novel published by Mary Shelley in 1818 is often considered the first work of modern science fiction? You should be able to guess this one if you don't know it. Which novel published by Mary Shelley in 1818 is often considered the first work of modern science fiction? So I'll recap that round. How many Star Wars films have there been? Who wrote Day of the Triffids? Which science fiction radio series caused a panic in 1930s America? What was the family's name in Lost in Space? Who was the mastermind behind the world of Star Trek? Which planet does Doctor Who come from? Who wrote Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Who is the dictator figure in 1984? Who is the central protagonist of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? And which novel published by Mary Shelley in 1818 is often considered the first work of modern science fiction? Okay, we'll move on then to round 9. We're into the last 20 questions. And question 1 of round 9, which is about the weather. On a weather map, what is the line called which joins together places with equal atmospheric pressure? On a weather map, what is the line called which joins together places with equal atmospheric pressure? the lines you always see on TV weather maps, although I don't know whether you see them on modern weather maps. You always used to. On a weather map, what is the line called which joins together places with equal atmospheric pressure? Question 2. What is a force 12 wind more commonly called? What is a force 12 wind more commonly called? You may find a clue to this in the next question, although I guess most people will have some idea. What is a force 12 wind more commonly called? Question 3. Who got the TV weather forecast disastrously wrong in 1987? Who got the TV weather forecast disastrously wrong in 1987, and famously so? Who got the TV weather forecast disastrously wrong in 1987? Question 4. Where is the Met Office based? Where is the Met Office based? Where is the Met Office based? Question 5. Which type of weather system brings settled or stagnant weather in the UK? Which type of weather system brings settled or stagnant weather in the UK? Which type of weather system brings settled or stagnant weather in the UK? Question 6. Which is the prevailing wind in most of the UK? Which is the prevailing wind in most of the UK? And by prevailing wind, shorthand for prevailing wind direction. Which is the prevailing wind in most of the UK? Question 7. Why do tropical plants flourish in the far southwest? Why do tropical plants flourish in the far southwest? You go to Cornwall and the Scilly Islands and you'll see plants which wouldn't survive in most of the rest of the UK. Why do tropical plants flourish in the far southwest? Question 8. Which winds blow between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn and the equator? Which winds blow between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn and the equator? They're very useful winds if you happen to have a sailing ship. Which winds blow between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn and the equator? Question 9. What is the name given to a very small, intense, fast-moving cyclone? What is the name given to a very small, intense, fast-moving cyclone? And very scary they can be. What is the name given to a very small, intense, fast-moving cyclone? And question 10. Which phenomenon can bring Saharan sand as far as the UK? Which phenomenon can bring Saharan sand as far as the UK? Be careful if you get this on your car. Don't rub your car or you will damage your paint. Wash it off first. Which phenomenon can bring Saharan sand as far as the UK? So, a recap of round 9. On a weather map, what is the line called which joins together places with equal atmospheric pressure? What is a force 12 wind more commonly called? Who got the TV weather forecast disastrously wrong in 1987? Where is the Met Office based? Which type of weather system brings settled or stagnant weather in the UK? Which is the prevailing wind in most of the UK? Why do tropical plants flourish in the far southwest? Which winds blow between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn and the equator? What is the name given to a very small, intense, fast-moving cyclone? And which phenomenon can bring Saharan sand as far as the UK? And we're into the last round. And the last round, as it's always been, is trivia. And the first question is, what is a Dennis dart? What is a Dennis dart? The only clue I'll give you is that you can see these in and around Chesterfield. What is a Dennis dart? Question 2. Where is the western end of the M4? Where is the western end of the M4? I think the eastern end is the Chiswick flyover, if I remember correctly, but the A4 and the A4M and the M4 all merge into one in that awful part of London. Not awful as a part of London, but certainly from a traffic point of view. I'm asking, where is the western end of the M4? Question 3. What is the average sea temperature in Skegness in August? And I want a specific answer, please, not a general answer. I'm sure everybody could give the general answer, which you'd expect. But the question is, what is the average sea temperature in Skegness in August? Question 4. What is a 9th wedding anniversary called in the UK? Apparently in the USA it's called a pottery wedding anniversary, but not in the UK. What is a 9th wedding anniversary called in the UK? Question 5. What is the dedication of Southwark Cathedral? What is the dedication of Southwark Cathedral? Before the creation of the Diocese of Southwark, Southwark Cathedral was the Bishop of Winchester's church in London, and Southwark was the place where the Bishop of Winchester maintained rather more lax licensing laws in the late Middle Ages and early modern period than in the rest of London, so that the ladies of the night in that part of London were known as the Bishop of Winchester's chickens. There you are. You didn't know that, but the question is, what was the dedication of Southwark Cathedral? Question 6. What is the UK urban speed limit? Please tell me you know this. What is the UK urban speed limit? And bear in mind, anywhere where you see lamp standards, anywhere which has street lights and does not have a different speed limit attached to those street lights, the speed limit is this. What is the UK urban speed limit? Question 7. In a hospital, what does ITU stand for? In a hospital, what does ITU stand for? Sometimes called other things, but I'm asking, since it's the latest thing, and in the last hospitals I've had to do with, this is what it's been called. In a hospital, what does ITU stand for? Question 8. Which county is the largest producer of rock salt in the UK? Which county is the largest producer of rock salt in the UK? one of the places where there is actually a lot of subsidence because of the extraction of rock salt. Which county is the largest producer of rock salt in the UK? Question 9. Where is Chesterfield gin made? Question 9. Where is Chesterfield gin made? Not where can you buy it, but where is it made? And Chesterfield is not a good enough answer. Where is Chesterfield gin made? In other words, where is the distillery? And question 10. How many trains an hour are there currently during the day from Chesterfield to London? How many trains an hour are there currently during the day from Chesterfield to London? One of the most pleasant things about waiting in a queue to go into Sainsbury's is that you can see the trains going past. How many trains an hour are there currently during the day from Chesterfield to London? So the trivia quiz. What is a Dennis Dart? Where is the western end of the M4? What is the average sea temperature in Skegness in August? What is a 9th wedding anniversary called? What is the dedication of Southwark Cathedral? What is the UK urban speed limit? In a hospital, what does ITU stand for? Which county is the largest producer of rock salt in the UK? Where is Chesterfield gin made? And how many trains an hour are there currently during the day from Chesterfield to London? Now, I will give you a few minutes to marshal yourselves. Again, make yourselves comfortable, pour a drink, whatever you need to do. Also, if there are any questions which you want me to repeat, now is the opportunity for you to request either through the live chat or by email to contact@crookedspire.org. I don't see any requests. Obviously, I've been reasonably clear. Any hopes? Any hopes? Exciting times. I will again respond to feedback to this quiz if you want to have a quiz for next week. I don't intend to carry these things on when the lockdown is loosened unless the church unaccountably decides, as it did before the national lockdown started, that we should be locked down anyway, in which case I might start doing other things apart from writing quizzes. Okay. We're getting up towards 10 to. I'll wait until 10 to 9 before going over the answers. I can't see anybody in the live chat saying that you're hopeful or anything of that sort. Can somebody put something up in the live chat or on the email to show that I'm still online? I think I'm still online, but I'm just looking at myself. And in the meantime, I'll have another swig of whiskey. Oh, Jack has made himself known. Hello, Jack. Nice to hear from you. Audrey, yes, all good that end. Okay. We are getting some feedback. That's excellent. Just to know that you're all out there, it says there are 22 people looking. but I can't tell who those 22 people are. And I'm slightly nervous of clicking on the 22. Well, I have clicked on the 22 now, nervous though I was, and it won't actually tell me who they are. There must be some way of finding out. Oh, we've got not hopeful of doing well. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll wait and see. People hoping for more than last week. We'll wait and see that as well. Okay, we are now ready for the answers. So, from round one, TV drama. The final episode of Downton Abbey was broadcast on Christmas Day, December the 25th, 2015. Christmas Day, December the 25th, 2015. 1 point for the year, and if you have the full date, you can have 2. There have been 2 TV adaptations of the Forsyte Saga, one in 1967 and one in 2002. The part played in Peaky Blinders by the poet Benjamin Zephaniah is Jeremiah Jimmy Jesus. Jeremiah Jimmy Jesus. Chief Superintendent Strange in Inspector Morse was played by James Grout. The Duchess of Duke Street, her name in the series and also in reality was Louisa Layton, or her married name was Louisa Trotter, and I will accept either of those. Louisa Layton or Louisa Trotter, and I will accept either of those. In the BBC series, Miss Marple was played by Joan Hickson. Rumpole of the Bailey was written by John Mortimer. Ashfordley was in the North Riding of Yorkshire. It was in that police drama, which was written for Nick, what's his name, who from EastEnders. The quiz show, which is the setting for quizzes, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And Livia in I, Claudius was played by Sian Phillips. If you want me to repeat any answers, then please get onto the email or the live chat, otherwise I will press on. The first commercial Macintosh was put on the market on the 24th of January, 1984. The 24th of January, 1984. The father of the modern computer is Alan Turing. In a binary measured kilobyte, there are 1028 bytes. The company which produced the personal computer and word processor, the PCW, was Amstrad. I had a PCW 256, and very good it was too. Google was founded in September 1998. The operating system on which Microsoft Windows was originally built was MS-DOS. The standard size of a floppy disk prior to its replacement by the CD-ROM was 3.5 inches. Samsung is based in South Korea. Microsoft Excel works with spreadsheets. And the first commercially marketed home video games console was the Magnavox Odyssey in 1972, that far back. The Magnavox Odyssey in 1972. So, I don't know how well you did in that. Somebody got no points in the first round. I suspect you probably got a few points in the second round. We'll move on to agriculture. Holstein Friesian cattle are bred for milk. A Tamworth is a pig. Rapeseed is commonly used for oil. The 2 English counties where most commercial asparagus is grown are Herefordshire and Worcestershire. Winter wheat is sown in the autumn. Cabbages, cauliflowers, and broccoli belong to the Brassica family. The most common breed of sheep in the British Isles is the Swaledale. The county which was known as the Orchard of England is Kent. The most commonly planted potato in the UK is Maris Piper, because it's considered to make the best chips, although I think King Edward's do. But most chippies consider Maris Piper does. And battery production of eggs was prohibited in the UK on the 1st of January 2012. Again, 1 point for the year, and you may have 2 if you had the date. Move on then to round 4, which is engineering. The 2 shafts which form part of an Otto cycle internal combustion engine, the camshaft or the drive shaft, only the camshaft can be replaced by electronic actuators, because the camshaft actually actuates the valves and they can be actuated electronically. The drive shaft is what transforms the linear movement of the cylinders into the circular movement which drives the car. So you couldn't replace that electronically. So it is the camshaft which can be replaced by electronic actuators. The tallest railway viaduct from 1857 until 1967 was the Crumlin Viaduct. And I think it was Gone with the Wind which was filmed on there. I may be wrong, but some classic film was filmed on there just before it was dismantled. Roman aqueducts were built to bring water to cities. The Florentine engineer who outlined the principles of flight was, of course, Leonardo da Vinci. Isambard Kingdom Brunel will do, built the Great Western Railway. The pivot point of a lever is a fulcrum. The Humber Bridge is 2.22 kilometers or 1.38 miles long. The modern use of the crack or crook frame is the A-frame, and the developer of the first successful hovercraft, famous on Blue Peter when I was little, was Christopher Cockerell. Question round 5. The last model to be produced under the brand name of Humber was the Sceptre. The configuration of engine which powers most Subarus is the Boxer engine. Most petrol engines have vertical cylinders which go up and down and then have the motion changed by the drive shafts. A Boxer engine has the cylinders which move horizontally and move the drive shaft like that, and they're called a Boxer engine because the cylinders look as if they're punching each other. So that's why it's called a Boxer engine. How many iterations did the European Ford Escort have? It had 6. The 6th was a very thorough overworking of the 5th, but it was considered Mark 6. So the European Ford Escort had 6 iterations. I learned to drive and pass my test in a Mark II Ford Escort, the last Ford Escort to have rear-wheel drive. A coupe usually has 2 doors. The plastic car with the 2-stroke engine, which was common in East Germany, was the Trabant. And I've been brought back. I missed a question. Thank you for that. We'll go back to engineering. Question 7. The fastest passenger airliner ever to operate across the Atlantic was the Concorde. I started off by asking what was the fastest passenger airliner ever, and of course the Tupolev was faster than the Concorde, but it's difficult to call it a passenger airliner because it never really went into revenue earning service even though it carried passengers. So I changed the question. to save confusion. Okay, I've gone back over that question. We're back on now on question 6 in cars. The recently deceased driver, the greatest driver never to have won the World Championship, was, of course, Sir Stirling Moss. Saab cars were known for their aerodynamics and ergonomics because Saab was first and foremost an aeroplane maker. The British maker cars in the Italian jobs were, of course, 3 Minis. The car which came in any colour as long as it was black was the Ford Model T. And this year's What Car Best Performance Car for the 3rd year running is the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio. So we'll move on swiftly, since I am gaining a little bit, I have a little bit of envy going on, to iconic structures. The original purpose of the Taj Mahal was as a mausoleum. The greatest Gothic building south of the Alps is considered to be the Duomo, or cathedral, in Milano, or Milan. The Empire State Building was opened in 1931. The Incas built Machu Picchu. The statue of Christ the Redeemer dominates Rio de Janeiro. The Sydney Opera House is in the Expressionist style. Chesterfield's crooked spire is not fixed to its tower at all, so no method was used to fix it. The higher tower is the Eiffel Tower. The Blackpool Tower is 518 feet or 158 meters tall. The Eiffel Tower is twice as tall, 1,063 feet or 324 meters. The famous Raffles Hotel is in Singapore, and the Hallgrímskirkja in Reykjavik is dedicated to Hallgrímur, I thought you might have got that as a clue, Pétursson, who was the author of the great Icelandic religious classic from the 16th century, the Passion Hymns. So the Hallgrímskirkja is dedicated to Hallgrímur Pétursson. And we'll move on to round 7, which was tea and coffee. Brazil is the largest world producer of coffee. Coffee originated in Africa. Tea originated in East Asia, although Asia will obviously do. There are 3 Scottish-grown teas which you can buy. Very interesting. There is a Welsh tea which you can buy, which costs a ludicrous amount of money. There is a Cornish tea which you can buy only blended with Assam or Darjeeling teas, and that costs a ludicrous amount of money. And there are 3 Scottish-grown teas which you can buy. The espresso machine was invented in Torino, Turin. A samovar is a Russian kettle cum teapot cum urn. The spice commonly added to coffee in the Middle East is cardamom. Brooke Bond produced PG Tips. Chicory essence is added to Camp Coffee. And the city where the Russian Revolution was planned in coffee houses was, of course, Vienna. On to science fiction. There have been 9 Star Wars films in the main canon. John Wyndham wrote Day of the Triffids. War of the Worlds caused a panic in 1930s America in its radio series because it was set as a news narration, and people thought it was the real news. The answer to round 4, question 7, I've been asked again, is Concorde. That's correct. The family's name in Lost in Space is Robinson, after the Swiss family Robinson, the space family Robinson. The mastermind behind the world of Star Trek is the genius of Gene Roddenberry. Doctor Who came from the planet Gallifrey. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was written by Philip K. Dick, and that formed the basis for Blade Runner. The dictator figure in 1984 was, of course, Big Brother. The central protagonist of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was Arthur Dent. And the novel published by Mary Shelley in 1818, often considered the first work of modern science fiction, was Frankenstein. So we move on to round 9, which is weather. It is an isobar which joins together places with equal atmospheric pressure. A force 12 wind is more commonly called a hurricane, and it was a hurricane which Michael Fish disastrously misforecast in 1987. The Met Office is based in Exeter. The weather system which brings settled or stagnant weather in the UK is an anticyclone, or I'll accept high pressure, which tends to bring warm sunny weather in the summer and cold, frosty, and sometimes, because it's stagnant, misty weather in the winter. The prevailing wind in the most of the UK is the southwest wind. Oh, somebody got 10 out of 10 for science fiction, that's good. Why do tropical plants flourish in the far southwest? Because of the effect of the North Atlantic drift. Although I will accept Gulf Stream, it doesn't actually get as far as the far southwest, but the North Atlantic drift does, and it is a branch of the Gulf Stream, and it ensures that the winters are mild enough not to kill the tropical plants. The winds that blow between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn and the equator are the trade winds, which are known as trade winds because, of course, in the days of sail, they were favourable for moving east to west and west to east trade. The name given to a very small, intense, fast-moving cyclone is a tornado or a twister. And the phenomenon which can bring Saharan sand as far as the UK is called the Scirocco, or otherwise blood rain. And that blows across the Mediterranean. It's far more common in Sicily and in parts of Italy and places which have coasts on the Mediterranean, but the sand can get as far as the UK, and I will accept either Scirocco or blood rain as an answer to that. And then on to the trivia. A Dennis Dart is a type of bus, and Stagecoach have a number of them. The western end of the M4 is at Pont Abraham, which is between Swansea and Llanelli. The average sea temperature in Skegness in August is 17 degrees centigrade or 63 degrees Fahrenheit. And I can hear you all having answered too bloody cold. A 9th wedding anniversary is called Copper. Southwark Cathedral is dedicated to St. Mary Overy. The UK urban speed limit is 30 miles an hour. ITU stands for Intensive Therapy or Treatment Unit. Intensive Therapy or Treatment Unit. The largest producer of rock salt in the UK, county-wise, is Cheshire. Chesterfield gin is now made in Markham Vale. And currently there is only one train during the day from Chesterfield to London. Under the lockdown, there is only one train an hour during the day from Chesterfield to London. So I will take myself a last mouthful of whiskey, and I will wait to hear whether you dare tell us what your scores are, or whether you have any feedback, or whether any questions like the Concord one, which I missed. No, we've got higher scores than last. We got 50 here. Not many people got over 40 last week. We've got 50 here. I'll give half a mark for Alfa Romeo, but it needs to be we've got 59 there. We've got 60, 37. I'll try and get to, okay, I'll bear that in mind. Good, I hope you had fun, Jack. We'll see if there's any more feedback. And then I'll give in to tiredness, and we've got 39. 45 and a half. Good. Well, I had fun. I enjoyed putting it together. And as I said, if the lockdown is continuing under its present form, then there'll be another quiz next week, as long as you're happy to have one. We've got 61 there. Can we have a Shakespeare round? Oh dear, we got 55. I will include some Shakespeare. Well, I've already included Shakespeare questions. Anyway, I'm glad you've enjoyed it. We'll look forward to next week. Well, we'll hope. No, we can't hope that it'll be lifted, but I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. And now I'm going to press the button and say good night. Thanks to everybody.